Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. The White House was subpoenaed Friday by House Democrats as part of their impeachment investigation of President Trump. 3 House committees are requesting documents related to the impeachment inquiry against the president. The administration has 2 weeks to comply. Lawmakers also requested new documents from Vice President Mike Pence. They want him to provide information related to his contacts with Ukraine. Meanwhile, the president spent Friday defending his actions at the center of the controversy. Mr. Trump asserted his request for Ukraine to look into Joe Biden had nothing to do with politics. As a reminder, it is illegal for a person to receive anything of value from a foreign national in connection with a U.S. election. The president's comments come the same day the inspector general at the center of the controversy appeared on Capitol Hill. Michael Atkinson handled the whistleblower complaint. He met with lawmakers behind closed doors. As Democrats gather more information, Weijia Jiang has more on how the White House is preparing for the battle.
I don't care about Biden's campaign.
President Trump today was adamant there's one reason he asked Ukraine to investigate the Biden family and claimed it was not political.
And I think I have an obligation to do it, probably a duty to do it. Corruption. We are looking for corruption.
But the president could not name a corruption investigation he has asked a foreign government to launch that didn't involve political rivals.
We would have to look.
Democrats believe the evidence is mounting that Mr. Trump asked Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to look into the Bidens to help him win a second term, and even withheld military funds to dial up the pressure.
You know, when this came out, it was quid pro quo. Well, there was none. Also, yesterday, the ambassador, who I heard was tremendous and a tremendous person, he was 100% for what we're saying.
President Trump was referring to his former special representative to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, who testified for nearly 10 hours on Capitol Hill yesterday. In his opening remarks obtained by CBS News, Volker said the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was peddling conspiracy theories about Ukraine that were reaching the president of the United States and impeding our ability to support the new Ukrainian government as robustly as I believed we should. Volker provided lawmakers text messages that appear to show Giuliani and other officials discussing having President Zelensky publicly say he was investigating the Ukrainian company where Hunter Biden served on the board in exchange for an invitation to visit the White House. Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat to Kiev at the time, also raised several red flags about the halt in military aid. Last month he wrote, "I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." But the U.S. ambassador to the European Union disagreed. Gordon Sondland wrote, "I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. No quid pro quos of any kind." Late today, Biden defended his son.
It's not a conflict of interest. There's been no indication of any conflict of interest from Ukraine or anywhere else, period.
Weijia Jiang is a CBS News White House correspondent. Hi, Weijia. What do we know about this subpoena the White House received Friday?
We know that the House committees that are investigating actually drafted it up even before the White House missed today's deadline to turn over documents because they did not think the legal team would do it, and they were right. So now the White House has until October 18th to comply, but CBS News has learned that White House counsel is preparing to send a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that effectively says what we've been reporting all week, which is, until you hold an official vote on the House floor, they believe they don't have to cooperate. And so they're challenging her to actually take that vote because as of now, they don't believe it's a, quote, real impeachment inquiry. So as we've seen in the past with congressional oversight investigations, we expect this is all going to be tangled up in court, and the White House will again try to block information from getting to Congress.
And Weijia, as we heard in your piece, Volker provided those new text messages to Congress. Can you break down for us how significant these will be in the impeachment investigation?
Well, I think very, Tanya, and that's because it gives a crystal clear picture of the administration's strategy. It gives details about the conversations that the key people were having who were in charge of communications with Ukraine. And it shows that there was pressure put on Ukraine, even though President Trump insists there was not. In one exchange, you have then top diplomat to Ukraine sounding off alarms and saying, look, I don't think that this is kosher, basically saying that it's crazy that, we would try to hold up military support for Ukraine for a political reason. And of course, that's the big question here is why did the president ask Ukraine to investigate the Bidens? Just today here at the White House, he insisted many, many times that it had nothing to do with politics, that it's because he wants to get to the bottom of corruption. But he was not able to say, is there another example where you called on a foreign government to investigate a U.S. citizen or a U.S. company because of corruption? He said, we're going to have to look into that. All that to say, these particular text exchanges show that when it came to Ukraine, it appeared to be more than fact. In fact, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is part of these exchanges. And it shows that officials in Giuliani were trying to craft a strategy to present to Ukraine and say, if you can get your president, Zelensky, to publicly say that he is launching an investigation into the Bidens, then you could score a White House meeting with President Trump. And it's going to be hard to argue that that is not quid pro quo, as Mr. Trump has said so many times, does not exist with regard to Ukraine.
Yeah, a lot of explosive stuff in those texts. But meanwhile, Weijia, a new whistleblower complaint has been filed. It was made by an Internal Revenue Services official who claims there was possibly an improper effort to influence audits of President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence's tax returns. How will this play into the impeachment inquiry?
Well, I don't think it'll necessarily be evidence in that particular inquiry, but it certainly raises new questions and could launch a different one, again, opening questions about misconduct when it comes to this administration, particularly when it comes to the president's tax returns, which he has so far successfully kept a secret from the public, both in lawsuits and subpoenas from the different committees who are investigating on Capitol Hill. He has really gone to great lengths with his personal attorneys, with his White House counsel, to keep those a mystery. And so this just raises more questions because the whistleblower alleges that there was inappropriate efforts to influence those audits. And so it begs the question why and exactly who was behind trying to block the president's tax returns yet again.
Absolutely. Well, Weijia Jiang at the White House, we thank you for your reporting.
Thanks, Tanya.
For more, let's bring in Rebecca Kaplan. She is a CBS News Capitol Hill producer. Hi, Rebecca. So the Inspector General who handled the whistleblower complaint met with Congress behind closed doors Friday. What do we know about what Michael Atkinson told lawmakers during his testimony?
Well, Tanya, Democrats said that he spent a lot of time discussing with them why he found this complaint from a whistleblower about President Trump's call with the Ukrainian president in July to be credible and urgent. They were happy with the details that he provided, although they really didn't share much of that with us. Now, Republicans, for their part, raised concerns about the fact that the whistleblower had approached the House Intelligence Committee before he actually filed his complaint. This is something that we have been told is standard practice, and Democrats said that this is not really a valid complaint. If whistleblowers aren't ever allowed to approach Congress with these questions, then how will whistleblowers ever file complaints that come to Congress? But one interesting thing is that a lot of Democrats here are actually moving past the whistleblower complaint. While it is what sparked all of this discussion about Ukraine and the president's conversations, one lawmaker I spoke with today said, now that we actually have a transcript of the call, now that we have the president speaking publicly about this, the whistleblower complaint is not quite as important anymore. They feel like they have more of the primary documents that they need. So we'll see how this unfolds over the next couple weeks as many more people are expected to come in and meet with that committee behind these closed doors.
Absolutely. And Rebecca, the White House now says it wants a formal floor vote on the process of impeachment before providing any information. How likely is it we'd see something like that happen? And legally, is that something the White House can do?
I would say at this point it's pretty unlikely. Speaker Pelosi, who does control the House floor, has been pretty adamant that they are not going to hold a formal vote to open the impeachment inquiry. Her argument is that there's no constitutional requirement asking for this, and that Democrats are able to move forward with their investigation. What they do have to do ultimately is potentially come up with articles of impeachment in the committee and then bring them to the House floor for a vote. So this was a question that was actually also raised before the president did by House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy yesterday. He sent Speaker Pelosi a letter demanding a floor vote and a number of other clarifications on the process. Her pretty swift response was to say it's absolutely unnecessary, and just look at what the president did on the South Lawn today, asking China to investigate the Bidens. So she's been pretty firm in her stance there, and her caucus seems to be following her for now. So I wouldn't expect us to see that anytime soon.
House Democrats also demanded new documents Friday from Pence related to the Ukraine phone call. How critical has the vice president become to the impeachment investigation for Democrats?
We've learned more about his role in all of this in recent days, and I think some of the questions that have been raised are how involved was Vice President Pence in these issues? At one point, he was supposed to take a trip to Ukraine, and we know from some of these text messages from diplomats that were released by the House Intelligence Committee yesterday that the members of the Trump administration, some of his diplomats abroad, were trying to use a White House visit and White House meetings to get the Ukrainians to agree to investigate corruption pertaining to the 2016 election or to investigate the Bidens. So that was a real sort of carrot and stick method they were using. Vice President Pence, because he was supposed to visit Ukraine, became a part of that. There's also questions about whether he was the one. He was being used by the administration to tell Ukrainians that their military aid was being cut off if they did not pursue investigations. And that's at the crux of this issue that Democrats are looking at right now, whether the president improperly used his power to try to get the Ukrainian government to investigate his political rival. So these are the questions that are growing. Pence has not yet received a subpoena, but it is entirely possible if he does not respond to and hand over those documents, I believe the deadline they gave him is the middle of this month, October 15th, there could be a subpoena coming his way. And then again, that will get back to the question of what House Democrats do next. Do they try to go to court, or do they just move forward and say the White House is obstructing our investigation? So it's going to be a very busy month up here on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely, and a very busy month for all of us covering it. All right, Rebecca Kaplan, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Tanya.